Hello everyone, another edition of the Ottawa Market YouTube channel, and we're dealing with how we can rejuvenate the Senate so the Senate begins to fulfill its constitutional purpose and not simply consume public resources needlessly while being simply not much more than an environment of patronage. Now, the purpose of the Senate is to provide a countervailing force to the House of Commons. The House of Commons is elected by popularly elected, but as we know, the House of Commons, you have to have a lot of money to be a representative of the House of Commons, and you have to be affiliated to political party establishments, elite-driven political party establishments, and if you're not going to have a good chance of getting elected. So the result of this is that the House of Commons serves the elites. It's supposed to serve democratically elected people, but in practice it serves a clique of elites that do not represent the interests of Canadians as a whole and even their constituents, because they are representing the moneyed interest that got them there in the first place. Unfortunately, the Senate is not doing any better job. The Senate is in fact even less representative, because it is representative of the interests of the sitting Prime Minister today. Justin Trudeau was supposed to reform this, and it's no better than it was before. He's removed political party requirements, but the Prime Minister is in fact still appointing the senators based upon some so-called patronage advisory committee, that is basically selecting senators who are all, for lack of a better word, blue bloods. They're all elites. This is what they have in common. They all got in their positions of authority in the Senate because they're establishing, they have privileged backgrounds and privileged associations with people who are connected to the Prime Minister and connected to elites, and as a thank you for their service to these elite interests, and now they've become senators. Well, these are the steps which I believe which we can. These are the steps to make the Senate a representative environment that starts to serve its purpose and stops to continue to become an environment that's representing elites. The first thing we need to do is not only to remove political party associations to becoming a Senate, we need to make it elected, not simply being appointed by a patronage advisory committee and installed there through a patronage and a patronage inspired Prime Minister who appoints senators that reflect his prejudices and not the interests of Canadians. So we need to A, remove party distinctions, B, make it elected, but not elected in the same way of the House of Commons, where you have to have tens of thousands of dollars to run as a member of Parliament representing these political party elites. In my view, in order to make the Senate truly representative, we need to significantly lower the threshold required to run as a senator relative to running as a member of Parliament in the House of Commons. We need to run as a successful member of Parliament. Generally speaking, you need about at least $30,000 to $50,000 to run as successfully as an elected member of Parliament. We need to significantly, as everybody knows, you have to have fancy signs, you have to have fancy support by the fancy interests that are going to support you as far as money to get elected. And once you get elected, guess what? You're beholden to these interests if you wanted to continue to be elected. And this is why Canadians are being frustrated, because these elected politicians in the House of Commons are representing the elites who put money into their campaigns, and now they have to serve the elites if they want to remain in power. So in the Senate is the compilation of the various blue blood elites, and they're definitely not representative of the Canadians. They don't represent the disenfranchised. They don't represent the homeless people. They don't represent farmers. They don't represent vast constituencies of people who continue to be disenfranchised. So first of all, we need to, again, step one, not only remove the political party distinctions, but step two is to significantly lower the threshold that it takes to run as a Senate. As a senator, it needs to be elected. And in my view, the spending limit should be $1,000 so that any Canadian who wants to run as a senator can. We need a Senate which is driven by ideas, not driven by money. We need a Senate of Canadians who are compassionate about their communities, who are compassionate about making a difference, who are compassionate about representing their communities in all their diversities by significantly lowering the threshold to run as the spending limit to $1,000. That means that it won't be driven by money, it won't be driven by the construction unions, won't be driven by big unions or any other big corporate interests. It will be driven by people who see an array of candidates who are not particularly rich, who are there because they are committed to public service. So that is an essential step, and we need to enact to as we have this elected Senate, which is a significantly lower thresholds to run for office. We need to have a corresponding constitutional act to remove the senators, which are just simply there to serve their patronage interests and whoever that got them there in the first place. We need a Senate which is representative of Canadians, representative of their communities, do not represent money. So these are the steps. Step one, again, to remove political party distinctions so that senators are not associated with elites, which is what the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did, but then the Prime Minister's office still appoints them. Two, we need an elected Senate that represents not a Senate of patronage. So that's step number two. And three, that is going to be a useless step if, in fact, you have to have tens of thousands of dollars to run as a senator. That means you're going to be representing the same elite-driven interests of the House of Commons. So step number three is that we need to significantly lower the spending limit so that to run for office, you cannot spend more than $1,000. So that running as a senator becomes accessible to most Canadians, and that we can have a Senate which starts to reflect their communities, not the rich, not the vested interests, not the Prime Minister, not the corporate unions, not the corporations, not the vested interests which seek to manipulate political party politics and all sorts of party interests. We need a Senate of what Ed Broadbent used to call ordinary Canadians, Canadians who are there to serve their communities and who are there to champion our sense of who we are as Canadians, our sense of representation, a sense of what we need, people who start to represent the interests of communities who demand more health care, who demand better social services, who demand more accountability, who demand greater sense of democracy, who demand environmental protection. This is the type of Senate you're going to have when they're representing Canadians as a whole, people who are representing the homeless, people who are representing all the different communities which are currently being frustrated by the lack of representation of the current Parliament. This Senate is the so-called reform of the Senate under Justin Trudeau was completely outrageous. It is still the same hole of patronage that it was ever. It was just simply it's simply just outrageous. So we need to true critical reform that starts to enable the type of representation which is essential for us as Canadians to be able to regard Parliament as being representative. We need a Senate which starts to represent Canadians, not money, and these are the reforms which I propose to rejuvenate the Senate from its being a hole of patronage, a hole of privilege, a hole of elite manipulation, to a Senate which truly reflects the diversity of Canada's regions, the diversity of Canadians as a whole. This is the type of, we need an environment, a Senate which starts to be truly representative and truly a Senate which is able to accountably give a check to the elites who are in control of the House of Commons. We need a Senate of so-called, what Broadbent, again, to borrow his words, of ordinary Canadians who are ensuring that the House of Commons is passing legislation that is responsible, that is accountable, that is going to support Canadians, and not legislation which is just simply there to be serving elites. The current environment we have right now is that when legislation gets up to the Senate, it's there. All of them are under pressure to serve the elites that got them their job in the first place. So the Senate is completely useless because cannot serve as a check, because the people who got there are got there because of their connections to privilege, and the privilege the privileged association they maintain continue to control them as senators. So this is why the Senate is completely useless. We need a Senate which starts to reflect the grassroots of Canadians, and by doing so, we will see a rejuvenated Canada which starts to reflect Canadians as a whole, that serves to have a responsible check on the House of Commons, which is becoming more warped under these elites which are controlling legislation that is manifesting all kinds of corruption. We need a Senate which starts to reflect the democratic interests of people who continue to be disenfranchised by the House of Commons, who are not being enfranchised by the type of privileged associations that the senators have, that they seek to affirm. This type of environment is counterproductive to the democracy that Canadians represent, and we need to start. And these are the ideas which I hope that contribute towards the rejuvenation of our parliamentary system. We invite you to post your comments below if you think these are good ideas, if you think these are bad ideas. We invite you to post the comments below, and hopefully it will start to inspire a chain reaction of debate and discussion on the Senate and its role in Confederation and its role in our parliamentary system.